Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit Black Moon Lilith, square opposition or inconjunct one's natal Chiron. Now, when transits involve the Black Moon Lilith, could be about trauma, suffering, the negative manifestation of the placement, nefarious and fixated obsessive energy, and when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron. Well, I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay? Squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are negative and adverse in astrology. Now, the inconjunct, though it's neutral, but neutral aspect can have good and bad qualities in them, coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or a transition. So that in turn can cause some exasperation and tension. So basically, collectively, I do see this as an adverse transit. But anyway, when transit Black Moon Lilith basically makes an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron, well, it may manifest in trauma, suffering, the negative manifestation of the sign, nefarious and fixated energy. This may conflict with physical and emotional wounds. You may, it could be some situation where you may be overly fixated and obsessed. It could be over lamenting over something from the past. If you had, say, if your natal Chiron is in Pisces in the 11th house, it could be betrayal or deception by a friend, or there might have been something. Say if the natal Chiron is in Capricorn in the 4th house, it could be rather something with restrictions in your family life, or maybe there's some despondency in the family life that you're lamenting over, or it could even be maybe having to have dealt with a cold or callous or very undemonstrative, less dominant parent, which is often the mother, as some examples. Now keep in mind, Black Moon Lilith can be about physical and emotional suffering. The Chiron is connected with physical and emotional wounds. So in some cases, you could have a situation where you're dealing, with some trauma, might be exacerbating something that you've had for some time, or there might be some emotional trauma and suffering that you might be dealing with that might be making the physical pain worse. Or if you're dealing with things, it could be two different kinds of two emotional suffering associated with two different things, and one could be, and when you're getting this, it could be like a double whammy. So it can be a rather, can be a rough transit, but at least you don't have to worry about it really lasting, really for that long when you have this transit. But anyway. Another thing too, though, on the positive end, as far as Chiron goes, of course, it is associated with helping and healing others. It's the wounded healer. It's ways we can help ourselves in which we have difficulty helping. And I should say, it's a way we could help others in ways that we have in the same thing where we can help ourselves. And it's like we can, it's kind of like somebody, Chiron, say in the 4th house, say if it's Virgo in the 4th house, we may be able to organize, our homes and our family life, but we might, we might be able to organize other people, clean other people's homes, but we might have difficulty in helping ourselves in the manner in which we could, in whatever it is we're helping others, we're proficient in helping others in. And the thing about this is, this transit can be such where you might be dealing with some physical or emotional trauma that may make it difficult in you helping healing others at this time. You could be dealing with a formidable adversary, a powerful enemy, which may be conflicting with this at this point in time. It could be a situation too where if you're dealing with, if there's something in your life, where you become, Black Moon Lilith can be about what may put one in a strong state of fright and trepidation. And, it can be, a situation where if you're dealing with, some energy that has, put you in that state for some reason. If you're dealing with something that you might really be scared of at this time, it may challenge what you're trying to do in terms of helping and healing others. And it could be like, say, if you have, the transit of Black Moon Lilith and Libra in the 11th house as an example, maybe you're overly afraid of ingratiating yourself in society and being sociable, with others in groups. And maybe what's happened is if something like that occurs, it might be difficult in helping and healing others, because you might be in a situation where you just don't really feel like maybe interacting. It could just be with people in general, because of this. And this is something to really just to keep in mind during this transit. Now, another thing too is that the Chiron can also be about our ineptitude, weakness. It could be something that we feel we're inept in, or we might actually be inept in. If the natal Chiron, say, is in Gemini or the 3rd house, maybe there's some insecurity or some issue, feelings of ineptitude and weakness connected with communication, assimilating information, being able to articulate and verbalize things. And the thing about it is, when you're, if you're trying to even, say, work on that, if you're trying to go through self-healing, naturally, if you're having this transit, the Black Moon Lilith, again, basically making an adverse aspect to that natal Chiron, it can cause more difficulty if you're going through some kind of physical and emotional trauma at this point in time, or even if you're dealing just with the negative energy associated with the Black Moon Lilith. I mean, if you have your, say if the transit Black Moon Lilith is in Leo in the 4th house, it could be dealing with some very domineering or overbearing or arrogant home or family member, even someone you may feel, or at least have felt close to home with at some point in time. Now, another thing too is that Chiron is associated with our deepest pain, the pain that really runs deep. And naturally, if you're going through something on an emotional level or physical level, it might make that that deepest pain even feel even worse that you're dealing with. And the thing is, the problem is, if you have if you're going through physical trauma, which can be associated with the Black Moon Lilith, a lot of times when one experiences something traumatic on a physical level, they wind up being confined, or they become like more introverted. They wind up having to stay home more. And I think sadly what happens is, in a lot like a transit like this, when you're somewhat stagnant or can't do much physically, and you're homebound, you're not doing a lot, it gives you more time, sadly, to lament and brood over things that have caused from the past that may have caused you some pain. Now, another thing is that Chiron is connected with also diminished and depleted self-worth and self-esteem. And the thing is, what could happen is, if you're going through, some kind of physical suffering, naturally, it can have a negative effect on perhaps already depleted self-worth or self-esteem, because if there's physical issues you're dealing with, likely you're not going to be able to do as much physically and as what you had done previously. It can be, or if it's an emotional kind of suffering you're dealing with, it's something that might have really hurt you or making you feel down on yourself. Well, that might exacerbate existing diminished self-worth at this point in time. And sadly, that is how some of these, how some of this could manifest and pan out, how this transit may be expressed. Now, keep in mind too, though, that the thing about Chiron too is that it's also, you could say, the symbol is the key, and it might be where there's difficulty in finding the key, maybe to resolving physical or emotional suffering, or dealing with a formidable or powerful enemy at this point in time. What are you going to do about it? It might be really finding that key might be more difficult than you may think. But the good thing is that at least this transit is not something that's overly protracted or prolonged. So now Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now another way this transit may manifest could be where one may be overly fixated with helping and healing others. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Chiron is in Gemini in the 9th house, it could be maybe somebody that might be dissipating the self through lack of an integrated purpose, which is Gemini. It could be in higher education, maybe taking wide divergence of courses and not really having something where they're concentrating a lot of energy on. The thing about another thing too, and it could be again higher education, which is the 9th house. Another thing too, it may be more difficult to keep that deepest pain, which is you're talking about Chiron, suppressed, because the Black Moon Lilith is about what we don't want unveiled or revealed. And let's say if the natal Chiron is in Aries in the 12th house, as an example, maybe there was some pain. I mean, I have Chiron in Aries in the 12th house in my natal chart. It could be about having the courage, fortitude, or not having the courage and fortitude, just Aries, to combat, and that's also Aries, hidden adversaries, people that may have been impersonating themselves as friends to me, but were really maybe just manipulating or using me. And I could tell you that actually does, I would say that does apply to me, sadly. And this is something too, where it also, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be some trauma, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may adversely affect trying to actually deal with depleted self-worth at this time, which is Chiron. Now let's say if natal Chiron is in Aquarius in the 11th house, as an example, it could be maybe dealing with it could be idiosyncratic or even bizarre, very non-conforming behavior, which might make you, somewhat maybe rejected by society, which is the 11th house. And also, too, people prominent in one's life, people that may play a provocative role in one's life, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may conflict with trying to heal your own physical and emotional wounds and suffering, which is Chiron. Let's say if you're dealing, the Black Moon transit, Black Moon Lilith is in Capricorn in the 4th house. It could be somebody, the person that might be prominent in your life might be somebody that's an older family member, or one that's serious, or it might come across as cold or undemonstrative, or just somebody that might be overly structured and very structured and disciplined, as an example, and or could be a Capricorn Sun, Moon, or Ascendant person, or simply one that embodies Capricorn characteristics. That could be, the less dominant parent, which is the mother, someone you're close to home with, or just a family member in general. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.